This is the Drummer to the Bone podcast, where we answer questions you might have never asked about drums and drumming, and interviews with the great drummers you didn't know about. I'm Tom Sawada, co-founder of Drummer to the Bone. You can check us out at drummertothebone.com. This is episode 1, Who Invented the Blast Beat? So the legend goes that the blast beat, the flagship drum beat of death metal, was invented back in 1985 by Mick of Napalm Death. But then I did some research and I found that this might not be the case. So who invented the blast beat? So let's get the facts from the beginning and what we all know if you have ever done the research or asked yourself this question. So Mick Harris from Napalm Death did invent the name blast beat. And he was describing what he was playing, fast single strokes on the snare and bass drum. And that is all great. But the question is, was it in Napalm Death 1987 album Scum the first time the world heard of the blast beat? Well, in his book, Swedish Death Metal, by author Daniel Ekeroth, he claims that the Swedish hardcore band Asocial came up with the original blast beat back in 1982, so 3 years before Mick Harris invented the blast beat. And Asocial came up with this demo called How Could Hardcore Be Any Worse? So Ekeroth writes, and I quote, "The guys obviously got the idea that they should play as fast as possible on this recording. They really got sick with it. The intense drum beat was unheard of. They called it the one beat because the snare got hit constantly. This one beat was what will later be called the blast beat. But in 1982, nobody knew anything about that." End quote. So we have 1985 in England, Mick Harris. 1982 in Sweden, we have Asocial. At the same time, on the other side of the ocean, back in the US, Charlie Benante, drummer for Anthrax and currently on tour with Pantera, says that his band, Stormtroopers of Death, played and recorded the first ever blast beat back in 1985. The song was Milk, and to his credit, if you listen to the song, he is playing a blast beat, no question about it. But then things go sideways. Some have gone so far as saying that the inventor is jazz legend Tony Williams back in 1979. I am not kidding. For Thom Urach of AllMusic.com, Williams plays a blast beat on the song Dark Prince in the Tree of Doom live album. So I heard the song, and in my opinion, although it is some impressive drumming by Tony, as always, it sounds like really fast jazz comping more than a blast beat. Or we can even take it further back in time to 1970. And this is getting weird. There are historians who claim that the first blast beat, or at least an early version of it, appeared for the first time in Emerson, Lake and Palmer's song, The Barbarian. If you listen to the song, The Barbarian, that should be around the 3-minute and 40-second mark. So in this song, Palmer plays an early version of a blast beat. For me, it's not a blast beat yet. It's not there yet. But you could say it's an early version. I think it's an accident. And for me, the same goes with King Crimson's The Devil's Triangle, also from 1970, and also something that some music historians claim that that's when the blast beat first appeared. And you might even find that some mention Bill Ward of Black Sabbath playing a blast beat in some live versions of War Pigs. So 1985 and all the way back to 1970. So we have 15 years, or within 15 years, that different historians or authors, etc., claim that the blast beat was invented by someone around those 15 years. Whew. So this is more complicated than I initially thought about. So we'll continue in a second.
I love my Bazillion t-shirt, but anybody can wear a Bazillion tee. It's a household name. Anyone can wear a John Bonham t-shirt. We all love Led Zeppelin. But if you care about finding like-minded people, people who share the same love and passion, then Drummer to the Bone is for you. If you want 20% off your purchases, we have a secret store where everything is 20% off. All you have to do is subscribe to our mailing list. You can visit us at drummertothebone.com.
So, who invented the blast beat? Well, it seems this is up for debate. Was it Harris in 1985 in England? Was it Benanti in 1985 in the US? Was it a socialist drummer back in 1982 in Sweden? Was it Tony Williams in 79? Was it Palmer in 1970? You know, in my opinion, it makes sense that the blast beat came from punk and hardcore music, and then made its way to metal in the same fashion as, you know, metal came basically. Of course, we had Black Sabbath, but then all that influence from the second half of the 70s in England with punk, with new wave of British heavy metal and Motorhead and etc. That is what became the metal of the 80s, the thrash metal, etc. And of course, then death metal, you know, towards the end of the 80s. So one thing is for certain, back in the early to mid 80s, music was boiling up for a change. In those days, if you remember, well, or if you know, there were super fast guitar players, and guitar was going through a transformation phase with, you know, players like Eddie Van Halen and Yngwie Malmsteen and many others. And so for me, it was expected that in the drum department, there will be something in the likes of it, something that pushed the envelope, pushed the speed and the complexity of the music. It was like a revolution in general terms in what became how people approached the instrument. And that's what the blast beat is the last proper innovation in drum beats. If you think about it, in the last 30 years, 40, what was the last time that you heard something completely different? For me, I will say it was the blast beat. And so that's what the blast beat is, something that pushed the music to another level of speed and complexity. If you want to know more, I recommend that you check out Napalm Death, Scum. That's their 1987 album, which you can find on Spotify or most streaming services, as well as the D3 of Doom live album. That's the Tony Williams band. The song is The Dark Prince. Emerson, Lake and Palmer. This song is The Barbarian. And if you want to go through it around the 3-minute and 40-second mark, that'll be it. And King Crimson's The Devil's Triangle. So all of those easy to find on Spotify, for example. If you want to check out Charlie Benante's Stormtroopers of Death, the song is called Milk, and I only found it on YouTube. So go there if you want to listen to Stormtroopers of Death. And also, if you want to check out the book Swedish Death Metal by Daniel Ekeroth, it is super difficult to find a copy. But if you really want to dig through it, Google Books has it scanned, so you can Google it, and you can get by with that. I know it's not the same as having the book, but you can go far enough, I think. So, what do you think? Who invented the blast beat? Well, I recommend that you listen to the songs and come up with your own conclusions. If you want to know mine, well, Charlie Benantes says that he had never heard the blast beat before he played it in 1985, and I believe Charlie. If that's the case, it's an amazing coincidence. Maybe it was invented in 1982 in Sweden, but how will that demo that really most people never heard of will inspire drummers from other countries? You know, Mick Harris in England, Charlie in the US, etc. To me, it sounds like a zeitgeist, or a spirit of the age, if you will, where different musicians from different parts of the world were pushing towards the same goal, everybody at the same time, you know, going faster, more complex, and trying to come up with something more extreme. So, if they're all saying that they are the inventors, in a way, I think they're all correct. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast on Spotify or Apple. And on both, you can leave us up to a 5-star review. Got any questions you'd like us to answer or suggestions on who we should have on this podcast? You can leave us a comment on our Instagram or in the comment section on YouTube. We do read all the comments. We are Drummer to the Bone in all social media: Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you so much, and until the next episode.